The wind of the Central Asian steppe howls across endless grasslands. For centuries, nomadic tribes roamed here on horseback, fighting, feasting, and raiding. Few outsiders believed anything great could come from these scattered clans. But from this unforgiving land would rise a man who changed the course of world history, Genghis Khan. He was not born into power. In fact, he was born into chaos. Around 1162, near the harsh Anan River, a boy named Temüjin came into the world. His father Yasuge was a respected chieftain of the Borjigin clan. His mother Holan was strong and resilient, but power on the steppe was fragile. Alliances were made and broken with the speed of a galloping horse. When Temüjin was still a child, his father was poisoned by rivals. Suddenly, the family was abandoned by their own tribe, left to survive alone. The young Temüjin, his mother, and his siblings struggled against hunger, enemies, and betrayal. This harsh childhood forged a resilience that would define his destiny. Even as a boy, Temüjin showed ambition. He began forming bonds with other young men, promising loyalty and shared spoils. On the steppe, friendship could mean survival, and Temüjin's ability to inspire loyalty would later set him apart. But not all family ties brought unity. Conflict with his half-brother Bekta turned violent, and Temüjin killed him. It was a shocking act, but it established his authority within his household. By his teenage years, Temüjin sought alliances beyond his immediate family. He married Bert, a woman from the Anjarot tribe. This marriage was not only personal but political, strengthening his ties with neighboring clans. But soon tragedy struck. Bert was kidnapped by raiders. Temüjin acted swiftly, rallying allies, including the powerful Togrul Khan of the Karites and his blood brother Jamuka. Together, they rescued Bert, a rescue that solidified Temüjin's reputation as a leader of courage and determination. The partnership with Jamuka would not last. At first, the two swore eternal brotherhood. But ambition runs deep on the steppe. Jamuka sought to rule through traditional aristocratic privilege. Temüjin had a different vision. He promoted men based on merit, not noble birth. A shepherd who proved his skill in battle could rise as high as any aristocrat. This revolutionary idea won him the loyalty of many warriors who had long been overlooked. Tension between the two blood brothers turned to open war. Over the next decade, Temüjin rebuilt his strength. Slowly, he united tribes one by one, defeating rivals and rewarding loyalty. He established a strict code of laws, the Yasa, enforcing discipline and fairness. He banned the kidnapping of women, protected trade routes, and demanded absolute loyalty. For nomadic tribes long plagued by instability, Temüjin's rule offered something new: order. By 1206, the transformation was complete. At a great council of tribes, the Kurultai, Temüjin was declared Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. From a boy abandoned in the wilderness, he had risen to unite the Mongol tribes under one banner. But uniting the Mongols was only the beginning. Ahead lay conquests that would shake the world: China, Central Asia, the Middle East, and even the edges of Europe. Genghis Khan was no longer just a man. He was the storm on horseback, about to unleash the greatest empire the world had ever seen. By Erling Liu, Temüjin had become Genghis Khan, the universal ruler of the Mongols. For the first time in history, the tribes of the steppe were united under a single leader. But Genghis was not satisfied with unity alone. He looked beyond the grasslands, to the great civilizations that surrounded Mongolia, and he saw opportunity. The first target was the powerful Jin dynasty in northern China. The Jin ruled vast, wealthy cities and commanded strong armies, yet Genghis knew that Mongol strength lay in mobility and strategy. His horse archers moved swiftly, striking from a distance with deadly precision. They could appear, attack, and vanish before the enemy even formed ranks. Against the disciplined yet slower armies of China, the Mongols proved devastating. The campaign against the Jin revealed one of Genghis Khan's greatest innovations: psychological warfare. The Mongols spread terror ahead of their advance, sending messengers to demand surrender. Cities that resisted faced brutal destruction, but those that submitted often found mercy and protection. Fear became a weapon as powerful as the bow. While subduing the Jin, Genghis turned west to confront the kingdom of Shaisha. This smaller state was crushed and forced to provide soldiers and tributes. Each victory added not just territory but also knowledge. Genghis absorbed engineers, artisans, and scholars into his empire. Siege engines from China, maps from Persia, and technologies from conquered lands were all used to strengthen the Mongol war machine. By 1218, Genghis Khan's empire had grown, but an event on the western frontier sparked one of the bloodiest campaigns in history: the Khwarezm Empire. A wealthy Islamic state, stretching across Persia and Central Asia, made the mistake of insulting the Khan. When Mongol merchants arrived at the border city of Otrar, they were arrested and executed by the governor. Genghis sent envoys to demand justice. Instead, the Shah of Khwarezm killed one of the ambassadors and humiliated the others. For Genghis Khan, this was unforgivable. The response was swift and merciless. In 1219, the Mongol armies invaded Khwarezm. Wave after wave of horsemen swept across Central Asia, annihilating cities that resisted. Samarkand, Bukhara, Nishapur all fell to the Mongols. Chroniclers wrote of walls torn down, populations massacred, and survivors enslaved. It was a war of vengeance, but also of conquest. The Silk Road, the lifeline of Eurasian trade, now belonged to the Mongols. The campaign demonstrated another Mongol strength organization. Genghis divided his forces into disciplined units called tumans, each with 10,000 men. Communication was maintained by a relay system of riders, allowing orders to travel hundreds of miles quickly. This efficiency gave the Mongols an edge no medieval army could match. By the early 1220s, Genghis Khan controlled a vast empire stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. But the Mongols were not finished. In 1221, Mongol forces pushed even further west, reaching the borders of Europe. Scouts raided into the Russian steppes, and even as far as Hungary and Poland. Though these were only reconnaissance missions, they sent shockwaves through Christendom. The Mongols seemed unstoppable, like a force of nature. Despite his conquests, Genghis was pragmatic. He established laws to stabilize his realm, encouraging trade, protecting diplomats, and granting religious freedom. Merchants on the Silk Road now traveled under the protection of the Consul, ensuring the flow of goods and ideas across his empire. In many ways, his rule laid the foundations of a new, interconnected world. Yet beneath this vision was a darker reality. Entire cities lay in ruins. Populations were displaced. The price of Mongol conquest was often measured in rivers of blood. To some, Genghis was a barbarian. To others, he was a unifier who imposed order on chaos. By 1227, Genghis Khan had built the largest continuous empire the world had ever seen. From China to Persia, from Siberia to the edges of Europe, his banners flew. But even the greatest conqueror could not escape mortality. While campaigning against the Shia, Genghis fell from his horse and was badly injured. Later that year he died, leaving behind not only a massive empire but also a legacy that would shape the centuries to come. Still, the Mongol story was far from over. His sons and grandsons would expand the empire even further, reaching the gates of Vienna and the heart of the Middle East. The Mongol storm had only begun to sweep across the world. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, the world held its breath. Most empires crumble when their founder falls. But the Mongol Empire was different. Genghis had laid down clear rules of succession. His vast realm was divided among his sons and grandsons, ensuring unity at least for a time. His third son, Gedai, was chosen as Great Khan. Under his leadership, the Mongol armies pressed further west. In the 1230s, they invaded Russia, capturing cities like Kiev and Moscow. The once proud princes of Rus were reduced to vassals. By 1241, the Mongols had marched deep into Europe, defeating Polish and Hungarian armies. At the Battle of Mohi, their tactics overwhelmed larger forces with terrifying efficiency. Europe seemed on the brink of collapse. Then, suddenly, the Mongols withdrew. News had arrived from the east. Gedai Khan was dead. According to custom, all princes had to return home to elect a new Great Khan. Europe was spared, not by strength, but by Mongol tradition. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, another branch of the empire struck with equal force. In 1258, Genghis's grandson Hulagu led the sack of Baghdad, the jewel of the Islamic world. The great libraries of the Abbasid Caliphate went up in flames, scholars slaughtered, and the caliph executed. The destruction was so complete that legends claimed the waters of the Tigris River ran black with ink and red with blood. But not all Mongol rulers ruled with terror. Another grandson, Kublai Khan, turned his gaze eastward. In 1271 he declared the founding of the Yuan dynasty in China, ruling from the great city of Khambalik, today's Beijing. Under Kublai, China was united, and for the first time, it was ruled by a foreign dynasty. His empire attracted merchants, travelers, and scholars from across the world. One of them, the Venetian explorer Marco Polo, later carried tales of Mongol wealth and splendor back to Europe, sparking centuries of fascination. Despite their shared ancestry, the Mongol Empire soon fractured. Different branches ruled in different regions. The Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Golden Horde in Russia. Each pursued its own interests, often clashing with one another. What had once been a united storm began to break apart. Still, the impact of the Mongols stretched far beyond borders. They created the largest continuous land empire in history, connecting east and west like never before. The Silk Road thrived under their protection, allowing goods, technologies, and even diseases to travel across continents. Gunpowder, paper, and the compass spread more rapidly thanks to Mongol networks. So too did the plague. The Black Death, carried by trade routes that the Mongols had secured, would devastate Europe in the 14th century. The Mongols also changed the way wars were fought. Their use of mobility, communication, and psychological warfare influenced generations of commanders. Their policy of religious tolerance allowed Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, and other faiths to coexist under their rule. And their merit-based system, where talent mattered more than birth, opened doors for commoners to rise high in power. Yet their legacy is complicated. In places like Persia and Baghdad, they are remembered as destroyers. In China, Kublai is remembered as both a great ruler and a foreign occupier. In Russia, centuries of Mongol domination left scars on politics and culture. And in Mongolia itself, Genghis Khan remains a national hero, a unifier who gave his people an empire beyond imagining. By the late 14th century, the great Mongol Empire had fragmented into separate states. New powers rose, such as the Ming dynasty in China and the Ottomans in the Middle East. The age of Mongol dominance had ended, but the memory endured. The horsemen of the steppe had once swept across the world, reshaping it forever. From Beijing to Baghdad, from Moscow to Hungary, their shadow lingered. And at the heart of it all was one man, Genghis Khan, a boy abandoned on the steppe who united his people, forged the largest land empire in history, and left behind a legacy both feared and admired. His story is a reminder that from the harshest beginnings can rise the most extraordinary destinies.